When it comes to opinions on video games, we all have them. Some we like and some we don't. Everyone has different tastes and genres they prefer, which means it's really hard to say what the best games of all time are. But when it comes to bad games, everyone mostly agrees on what makes a game bad. It's very rare you'll find a game that has been absolutely panned by critics and just everyone who's ever played it that you actually like, which gave me an idea. Are there any games I've played in the past that I enjoyed but the reviews have gone in a completely different direction? It turns out there's quite a few actually. So today I wanted to take a look back at bad games I actually loved when I played them. Looking at all these games on Metacritic, it does seem like I am in the minority when it comes to actually enjoying them. And also, it's been a while since I played any of them, so let's take a look if I still enjoy them today or if they've aged as badly as everyone thought they were originally. So here are some bad games I love. A bit of a disclaimer for the first two games. They were recorded on my PS3, which thanks to the PS3's copyright protection means it's an absolute nightmare to record footage using a HDMI cable, so I've had to use a component cable to record the footage, meaning it's not amazing quality, but I will be investing in making the footage better for future videos if I ever use the PS3 again. The first game I'm talking about today actually comes from a series that includes one of my favourite games of all time. Maybe that's why I have such a soft spot for it. That game is Def Jam Icon. Back in 2004 I played Def Jam Fight for New York for the very first time, and like many others absolutely loved it. The story, the customization, the gameplay, and of course the great hip hop soundtrack. I still consider it one of my top 10 favourite games of all time. So when just 2.5 years later we got the next game in the series on next gen hardware, you would assume it would be another smash hit and cult classic everyone loved, right? Well, no. You see, Def Jam Icon is considered by many as the worst in the series and just an absolute mockery of the games that came before it. When the series first released all the way back in 2003 with Def Jam Vendetta, it started life as a WCW game, but thanks to the WWE buying the rights to that company, EA needed something else to base their wrestling game on, and someone said as a joke, let's base it on hip hop artists, which they all agreed to do, thus giving us the Def Jam fighting game series. Vendetta was still very much a wrestling game, using the legendary Aki engine, which is known as one of the best when it comes to wrestling games. Then with the release of Fight for New York, they still used the engine, but the game was turned into a more all-round fighting game as opposed to just wrestling. Different fighting styles, crazy finishers, as more insane fighting locations. Fight for New York had the perfect formula to make the Def Jam games something entirely unique in the fighting game genre. So what happened with Def Jam Icon? Well, they decided to strip out absolutely everything that made the last game great and to do something completely different. Instead of the classic wrestling feel of the previous games, Icon actually uses a modified version of the Fight Night Round 3 engine, which makes complete sense after finding this out. It does seem like a more realistic simulation based fighter as opposed to, well, this. From all this you can probably gather why most people dislike it. To be fair, the game didn't get terrible reviews, it was seen as mediocre at best, but compared to Fight for New York it's night and day. But you can ask any fan of the Def Jam series what they think of Icon, and the answer will be the same. It's just not a Def Jam game. So why did I love it if everyone else hated it? To be honest, it's a bit of a cop-out answer, but honestly just like the vibe of it all. Icon introduced its own unique take on fighting, where the music playing in the background actually impacts the level and environments, which you can manipulate by doing this, but don't try this in a real fight by the way, I did and everyone thought I was having a seizure. This interesting mechanic wouldn't be that good if it wasn't for the great soundtrack with songs from artists such as The Game, T.I., Sean Paul and Nas, and just Nas on his own. No one else was on that song with him, I promise. It also helps knowing the songs as well. If you know when the environmental hazards are going to happen, you can time throwing your opponent into it perfectly, which is quite satisfying. I also quite enjoyed the story mode as well. In this game it's called Build a Label, where you're in charge of, well, a record label, where you bring in artists to your label by beating the shit out of them. Sounds like something P did. Nope. Nas was on that song by himself, remember. When you sign the artist, you also have to publish their new song and decide how much is going into the budget for things like PR and advertising to try and get some platinum records under your belt. Does any of this matter in terms of the story? Not really, but I remember as a kid not putting much money into some of the songs because I thought, well, this is already a banger, it's not going to need much, which is definitely not how it worked. You also have to make sure you keep the artists happy by paying for things like legal fees and different things they want to do to keep them on the label. It's actually kind of crazy how in depth the whole thing is. They definitely didn't need to do all this for a fighting game. Also, the full character customization returns with real life brands to fully deck out your character, which in my case looks like a 50-year-old white bloke who should not be anywhere near a hip hop label. Overall, the story is fun, I did enjoy Fight for New York a bit more, but still, it's not too bad to play through. In terms of actual gameplay, like I said, it's a lot less arcadey than the previous games, with a lot of emphasis on punches and kicks than grappling. I think there's some sort of combo system, but in all honesty, I was just button mashing the whole time. I remember playing it as a kid and just spamming the roundhouse kick you would do with the analog stick in most of the fights. The game has about 29 fighters altogether, a lot of these obviously being famous rappers like Ludacris, E40 and Redman, among others, and even UK artist Kano makes an appearance. So playing it today, has my opinion changed? Well, not really. Can I sit here and say it's as good as its predecessor? Nope, absolutely not. But I still can't really hate this game. I enjoyed it then and I still enjoy it now. There's not much to say other than if you skipped Icon after being a fan of the previous games, give it a try. Honestly, it's not that bad. The way the game uses music to manipulate the stages, causing utter chaos on the screen, is great, and the graphics, even though they have the dreaded piss filter, still hold up surprisingly well. It's sad we never got another Def Jam game. There was one in development, a direct sequel of Icon actually, which leaked a few years ago, which seemed to have taken a bit of inspiration from the earlier games in the series, with some wrestling thrown in. Maybe that would have been the game to bring the series back to the top, but sadly that never happened, so it looks like we'll just keep hoping and praying for a remaster of Fight for New York, but I wouldn't be too disappointed if Icon got a bit of love as well. The year was 2010, and just around the corner was the FIFA World Cup in South Africa. The very first World Cup I remember watching almost every game, so it's safe to say I was hyped when it came to football. I obviously needed a game to play, and there was only really one answer. The official FIFA World Cup game, which in itself is one of the best football games I've ever played, especially on the PSP. Come on boys. Oh, he's got a bit of skill. Oh, top sugar buzzer, top bins. Even though I had FIFA, I was always looking for something a bit different, and thanks to a little indie developer known as Ubisoft, we got Pure Football. What? You've never heard of it? I mean, it's got Steven Gerrard on the cover and everything. I remember when this game first released, seeing it in my local game store for the usual £40 price mark, but I swear after just a few months the game was being sold for about a £5, which is when I bought it. So what is Pure Football? Well, it's a football game, but not like the traditional simulation games like FIFA and PES. Instead, the game opted for a more arcadey take with a five-a-side futsal approach. It's like a very early version of that rematch game that came out a few years back. It's fast paced and very easy to pick up and play. So why did everyone hate it? It seems a lot of people just found it quite bland and lack of any real character, which I kind of agree with. Looking at it now, it does seem quite one-dimensional, and compared to its competition, it's just lacking in every department. I mean, it doesn't even have a soundtrack. Why did I love it though? Well, it was just different. After a while you get bored of just playing FIFA or PES. It was always just the same old stuff, but obviously Pure Football with its five-a-side and arcadey gameplay just offered something unique. The game also has real players and teams, granted it is only national teams, but still no Faku or Roberto Larcos like the old PES games. I remember really enjoying the career mode. In this you create your own five-a-side team, which you then take around the world, climbing the rankings whilst also upgrading your team with other players from each nationality you play. It's actually quite interesting, as you unlock these players by completing certain objectives within the match, like a certain amount of passes or a few shots on target from the opposition. You also get to upgrade your own player. It reminds me a lot of the early FIFA Street games. It's a very similar setup. Okay, I can admit the game hasn't aged too well, the gameplay is a bit lacking. It does feel like a cheap FIFA Street imitation. I honestly struggled playing it. The input delay is so bad, I could never really make a precise pass or shot because the player just didn't react quick enough. It just ended up being frustrating. To be fair, the game only cost like £1 to buy, so in all honesty, I'm not mad at it. Should you play Pure Football? Well, considering the only way to play it is on Xbox 360 or PS3 hardware, it's not really worth the hassle of dusting off those old consoles, to be honest. This is the only game I'm speaking about today that I can't recommend, which is sad, as I remember very vividly playing this all the way back in the day on my PS3 and loving it. For some reason. The next game I'm speaking about is from a series that has a bit of a cult following. It's Call of Juarez. The best way to explain the series is to imagine Red Dead meets Call of Duty, and that's what you get. A Wild West first person shooter. The first two games in the series were received quite well, and it was something unique for the genre. So what do you do when you have a series with its unique selling point being its setting and time period being the main reason for all its success? Well, you turn it into a generic modern shooter, of course. Welcome to Call of Juarez, the Cartel. This is yet another game published by indie developer Ubisoft, developed by Techland and released in September of 2011. The Cartel, as I said, is a modern take on the Wild West shooter. Rather than cowboys though, the game focuses on 3 different cops trying to take down a drug cartel in Juarez. The game is loosely tied to the second game as one of the characters is related to the two main protagonists from Bound in Blood. You can tell they were really trying with this story as they've tried to flesh out a backstory for all three main protagonists, all coming from different parts of the justice system and having different distinct personalities. So what was it about this game that made it so bad? Well, I mean, just look at it. Even by 2011 standards, it doesn't look the greatest. It looks like some sort of indie game. And I'll be honest, the controls feel a bit janky. It's not an amazing experience to play this game. And I mean, this is a series that started life as a Wild West shooter, and now you're blowing up weed farms and shooting up crack dens in a modern day setting. Imagine if Red Dead did that sort of thing. It would be an absolute failure. In all honesty though, playing the game again 15 years later, I can finally see why people disliked it. I already said the gameplay and graphics are really lacking, and once you start playing the story, it does get a bit generic. There was also a multiplayer, but obviously no one is playing this. From what I can remember, there was only about 3 people online when it first released anyway, but from the online games I did play, it was what you expect from an FPS in the early 2010s, trying to be Call of Duty, whilst also trying to add its own unique twist. Very similar to Battlefield Hardline with the whole cops and robbers thing going on. So why did I like it? But honestly, it was just the setting. I thought it was really unique, and I'd never played any other game in the series, so to me it wasn't a massive issue being set in the modern day. I thought the missions were so unique for an FPS game compared to something like Call of Duty or Battlefield. It had a sort of Breaking Bad feel to it. The whole New Mexico look of the world and dealing with drug cartels, and yeah, just something different to the traditional military shooters we were being overloaded with at the time. Even though the voice lines and overall story could get a bit generic, the game had a really unique setup. You see, their 3 playable protagonists all have their own personalities, but they also have their own unique abilities and even side activities, which you get given secretly and must complete without the other characters finding out. But also you have to keep an eye out for what they're doing. It is such an interesting concept, and I could imagine the secret objectives being the foundation for a great multiplayer element, especially with modern day multiplayer experiences like Among Us. With all these unique aspects though, it doesn't stop the game's controls feeling really dated. The best way to explain it is like when you shoot a gun in a game that mainly focuses on melee combat. It just feels a bit awkward. That's how this feels. The game also has melee combat, which isn't great, so it's not doing very well in either of those things. The game's gun selection is a bit varied, but sadly no attachments or unique camos or anything like that, just the base guns, which is probably why the multiplayer didn't do so well either. Overall, I get why people hated this game. Its gameplay and graphics are just lackluster, its story tries way too hard to be taken seriously, but I didn't hate playing it again. It's hard to explain, maybe it is just nostalgia, but I really did enjoy going back to this game after all these years, and surprisingly it's still available on the Xbox store, so if you maybe are looking for something a bit different to play, maybe give it a go. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. The final game I'm talking about today has a bit of a crazy backstory. It's Homefront: The Revolution, released in May 2016 and developed by Dambuster Studios. The reason I say it has a crazy backstory is because it felt like a game that was just never going to come out, which is funny because the only other game that Dambuster Studios have made is Dead Island 2. The game is the sequel to THQ's first-person shooter, which released back in 2011, which I absolutely love the campaign. It was great, but a little short, and the multiplayer, well, it had one. That's all I can really say about that. So when I saw that a sequel now being worked on by Crytek and Deep Silver was going to be completely focused on a single player experience, very similar to Far Cry, I was excited, especially seeing all the different mechanics the game would have, like scavenging for items to build different equipment and being able to change your attachments on your gun on the fly, just like the old Crysis games. So then it released and I didn't buy it. That was mainly down to the fact the game was absolutely trashed by reviewers and just everyone in general. A lot of them saying the game was full of bugs and glitches, the gameplay was terrible, and overall it was just quite generic. I decided to avoid it until a few years later when the game was on sale for less than a pack of discos. I bought it and gave it a go, and you know what? It actually wasn't that bad at all. The first thing I need to bring up is the story. It's completely different from the first game. It's a similar premise, but rather than North Korea just invading the US, they sort of took over by controlling all of the technology that America use in their military. It's a bit strange how the story has been completely changed. I guess it gives the new developers a blank page to bring in their own lore and story. So sadly, no Hooters or White Castle. But you do get this weird Wendy's ripoff, so that's something. The story itself is pretty standard. You play as a silent protagonist who joins the revolution and help take over parts of Philadelphia from the KPA. Honestly, it's forgetful and it's lacking what I like so much about the original Homefront game. That was dark and wasn't afraid to show the grim reality of what was going on in the game's world. It feels like you're supposed to just understand that the KPA equals evil rather than showing it like the first game did. It just means I didn't really care what was going on and just blindly went around doing objective after objective in the game. So what's good about this game? Well, honestly, it looks great and has aged surprisingly well, considering it's now 10 years old, and those mechanics I spoke about earlier are still here. Being able to change your gun on the fly in so many different ways is a great system to have, especially in this game. One of the best things about it is the fact that it's split up into two different zones. First up are the yellow zones. These are where most of the civilians live and are under complete control of the KPA. If you try and start a gunfight in the middle of the street, you'll be overrun straight away, meaning in these parts of the game, it's better to be stealthy and sneak around as much as you can to keep gunfights to a minimum. Then you have the red zones, which are more open and feel like more of an active battlefield. You'll be starting a gunfight around every corner, taking on the enemies with an army of resistance fighters, whilst you take over parts of the map to take control of the locations. I really like this system, having two separate parts of the game where you have completely different playstyles, something completely unique, and it's one of the main reasons I recommend playing this game. Are the objectives a bit generic? Yeah, all of it is, but it doesn't stop it from being a blast to play. The game also has tons of weapons for you to unlock and equipment to obtain, which is a bit of a grind, but I don't know, there's just something quite addictive about the whole thing, slowly taking over the map by doing the small objectives dotted around, broken up every now and again by doing a story mission. I honestly did quite enjoy my time with the game overall. Can I recommend Homefront Revolution? Well, yeah, especially when it's on sale, which is like all the time. This game has more sales than a bloody furniture store. I get why people didn't like it back when it first released. It isn't anything special in terms of gameplay or story, but the way it sets itself apart, its different mechanics and segments, definitely makes a unique experience. So if you do see it on sale, give it a go. I'm sure you won't be disappointed. So there we have it, some bad games that I absolutely loved. The more I thought about this topic, the more I realised there's quite a few bad games I like. So if you'd like to see a part 2, let me know in the comments below. Also, let me know your opinions on the games I spoke about today, and if there's any bad games that you quite enjoy. Anyway, that's it from me today. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, I'll see you when I see you.